Hello dear viewer, Revan619 here. How the devil are you? Now, today I am working on a number of things. As you might have seen in my community posts, if you do follow the channel already, I have updated how I do a lot of the build ideas, given in some more ideas for perception. The reason for this is, with buffs, you tend to get to 200 stats, so your individual levels aren't that important. However, what is important is if you're not buffing the full party. So for a build to be able to stand on its own 2 feet, you tend to want to actually invest in perception to increase your turn order, as well as to stop enemies dodging you in Act 3 and other high dodge enemies. So with that in mind, I've edited a bunch of my builds to give other options for, instead of leveling strength at certain levels, to go into characteristic training perception and to level perception, so that way you can more reliably hit when you're not fully buffing just one party member at a time. So with that, I've updated all my builds, I've updated all the companion builds, and I'm working on some new ones. So I'm going to be covering my Lena the Slayer build, but today I'm actually going to be covering the Shield Pyromancy Berserker, as you can see in the background here. I will then get onto my Operative Navigator, I will then do my Heavy Gunner build, and I will also do my Noble build. These are the ones that have had the most feedback and comments on the channel, and I'll start to look at to do other stuff with that, and maybe showing off some gimmicky and revised versions of some companion builds. So with that in mind, let's talk about some of the stuff that we are doing on my very first build and some of the options you have available here. So the gear I've gone here is because this is a mercenary, so I don't have full access to everything. Obviously, if I was going dogmatic, I could get a +5 star ratings from Eyes of Joyce, which is the meta pick to go on there. If not, you could always, if you're doing certain party combinations, you could use Ghost Helm here, and you could use that to stack some willpower as well there, and then you could use Chains of Domination to stack that further. So I'm using Chains of Domination because I've not gone the Santic route on this character. I'm instead opting to go the route where I actually just focus on Inflame. So that means that Chains of Domination can increase my willpower on kill, which increases my Psyker damage, which will then increase my Inflame, which will then increase my melee damage. If you don't like that, you could just quickly throw out that for the Hand of Offense instead. So that's another perfectly viable option, which is the Hand of Offense will give us a +15 base damage there, and you could use that instead to actually be getting off some damage. So on this build, we are using the Flames of Retribution. The whole purpose around the Flames of Retribution is it sets you on fire immediately, so you can just orchestrate and get going, and then you can inflame to buff it up, and you've already got your orchestrate damage. You can then put Ignite on top of this, so when you inflame, you actually have 2 sources of fire damage applying to your axes. So with this one, I like Tearing Vengeance, but you can also use Carnage, and you could even go for 4 swords, so there is options I've put into the build to use 4 swords instead. So it is going to be entirely reliant on what you like to use. You could put more burning on there if you wanted to use, say, like Cursebringer or something like that, or you could even use Veil Render on this build. So there is a lot of options that you can use when it comes to 4 swords as well, and even just weapons in general, because Veil Render is a very strong one. The more Veil Degradation, the more damage it does. But Incinerator is also just a really fun sword to use. High damage, high armor pen, and you can stack it up even further, and it will stack even further with crits adding Warp Burn. So you could use this guy on here if you're going that route to do a lot of extra stuff here, and then all the damage of your extra psi rating will stack. And if you keep stacking psi rating with the Psyker's Breastplate, which I've actually got the wrong one on here. I thought that was the Psyker's Breastplate. It wasn't. There we go. That's that fixed. But yeah, you can do that to do some other things and a lot of damage. So let's get in some battles, and then I'll talk about some key talents. I won't go through everything because this is just a short build. If you want a full build video, do like this video, do subscribe, do tell me that you want to see the full version, and we can talk about some other options. At the moment, I've got the AoE shield ability here. This is so we can build up versatility, but there are other options you can use. I've also got the inertia boots, but you could easily, instead of the inertia boots, because this is an arc militant, you could put on some of the revenge attack boots. So it does use instant retribution, but you could even use enforcer's light boots. So there's a lot of options. That's why I haven't updated the suggested gear builds yet, because first of all, I want to update the loot tables. So there's no point me suggesting gear when every comment's going to be, where do I get this gear? But these are some options that we're going to have a look at here, and do obviously keep in mind everything I've suggested for A-Blood and Heinrichs in the past, because that will apply here as well. As this is going to be a build shot, we're just going to cover some of the very important things here. So rank 5, you can take Clenched Teeth or Hardened Scars. This can make it very survivable. Rank 6, there's the option for 4, Forceful Strike for knockback, which can disable an enemy, or Reckless Strike for increased damage. I like to get into Impetus early on because I don't build agility on this, so I don't go for Desolation. Instant Retribution is obviously going to be very useful with shields because we're going to be going into that. Now, I like to go heavy armor proficiency to build into Psycho's Breastplate, but you don't need to take that. But Steel of the Forge, you're going to want to change that out if you get that. This is kind of what stops Aurora kicking you about. A lot of this build for being online is actually going to come from the Arc Militant side of things. Now, I always find Reckless Rush is the priority to go into, because when you have a stack of versatility, what this does is it increases your versatility by 3, and with the upgrade for All Out, it means that you can attack and move. Always Ready makes you start with 2 stacks of versatility, so that's quite useful, but yes, again, that All Out is very important. You could even take All Out at rank 3 and then take Always Ready at rank 6. You just got to remember to use Reckless Rush after your first attack. Wildfire is what I go next, and I also get dual weapon combat because the shield is very good for up an attack economy, and with the necklace you can do an area attack with a normal attack, so having dual weapon combat helps get up that versatility early before you have access to Warp Surge Brooch. Flashfly will get you a 3rd attack very quickly, which is what lowers the cost of Wildfire. This is when I then start to pick up the Psi rating increases. The reason I don't do it early is you're not actually using the Psi rating increases too much. Yes, it helps get up the burning damage for Ignite, but that also gets up your armor, so it kind of sort of balances itself out. Pendle's very useful to make this build very strong and very survivable. As you can see, I go into Characteristic Training Perception. This is one of those new paths. If you check the build spreadsheet below, you can see where you can have this or where you can change it to something else. Around rank 15 is where I get Firestorm, which is where this becomes the walking tactical noob build, but in hindsight, that was very relevant in 1.3, but when we got the update for the DLC that added Executioner, that became the actually Atom Bomb. But yeah, then we start building into critical versatility, more perception, exploit weakness, fire within, which can help our attack economy, because when you get 8 crits or kills, you can get a free attack. So it's something else that helps build up attack economy. In Exemplar, we get Crowd Kill, which can increase our area damage dealing by +5, which is from our strength for each enemy in the area of effect. This does apply to Firestorm, so it is quite useful for that, as well as being good for your area of attacks on your melee weapons. However, we don't get Arms Master, so we don't get 1 AP area attacks. Contempt for the Weak is going to help build things up. Inflame is very good here because that can increase our melee pyro damage, which is the whole gimmick of the build. You could actually go into Santic and start picking up Santic abilities, but it's going to be depending on the theme that you want to go for the build, but I've had added in options for that there. Because I don't build into strength and I instead build into perception, so this build is more self-reliant, this is when we take peak condition, which is where most of our strength will actually come from. There are several options that you'll see in here for Relentless Blaze or Steel Mind to go in for the Santic abilities and talents, but that's not what I'm doing at the moment. Kick gives us even more attack economy. For some reason they're all 0 AP now. I don't know if that was by design or a mistake in the update. Degraded Defense is the main thing to get up all our damage. Now, rank 11, I take Ramming Speed. If you want to go into Four Swords this way, you take Blade of Light. And then we go into Strong Hand. Now, if you don't want to go into Strong Hand, you can get Vital Points, but I kind of like it, and I take Vital Points later. Molten Beam's an option. It's something that you could trade out for something else. If you wanted Reckless Strike, you could also take it here, but Molten Beam, I just like having the little Beam of Death, but it's going to do less damage because we don't focus on willpower as much on this build.